Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the show. No audio, Tommy.
Good morning, Mike.
There we go. Now we got audio from Tommy. How's everybody doing?
Not too bad, my friend. It's another week. We are in the week the month of schools coming back. My kids only have 2 weeks left until they get into their next grades. It's been nice. Do you get to a point in the summer where everyone's home and you kind of get a little ready for everyone to get back?
Yes and no. I mean, I enjoy them being around. I work at home all the time, so it's nice being able to see them around the house throughout the day. I don't see that during the school year. But believe it or not, Tommy, so up here in the north, the cold north, I guess, the Great White North, whatever you want, the Canada, basically. We're up here so far north. We extend our summers much longer than other parts of the U.S. We have some friends who live down in Atlanta, and apparently this was like their first week of school, like this week.
Oh, wow.
Well, they get out a lot earlier too. So they get out earlier, but they start a lot earlier. So it sounds like we're kind of like one of the last groups to kind of go back to school in this time frame, which I like because then we have a little bit longer summer. We can enjoy a little bit more here. I think it's intentional because for us in Wisconsin, I think they try and keep tourism going around a little bit longer later into the year where we still have some good warm weather here. And this is kind of our best time of our year. August, September is kind of like it's starting to turn into fall. It's very pretty, comfortable weather, temperatures. It's pretty nice.
Very nice.
All right. Let's jump into our main topic today. Our main topic is Translitical is so much more. If you've heard the word Translitical before, it's a word made up by Gartner a while ago. Microsoft has adopted this for a Translitical task flow, which is a feature of building reports and connecting them to functions inside Fabric, and then also inside being able to do actions with those functions. You can do a lot of different things. So I think we're going to unpack a little bit what does Translitical look like, what are the different use cases for it, and where potentially you could use this. All right. That being said, let's jump into the news. Tommy, kick us off with some news.
All right. We have a bunch here. So let's jump into just a good one for our general One Lake. Now available as a source for copy into an open row set, which are SQL statements, is One Lake Pass. So it just kind of enhances the ability if you're ever copying data into, if you've done your SQL statements before, it's just making Lakehouse that much more flexible and robust, and really in terms of being a source where you can push your data into.
So these are two functions that are, and these are SQL-like functions. These are SQL functions that are part of T-SQL. And the reason these are important is because this is coming from the SQL, Microsoft Fabric data warehouse. So you can read and write directly to the lake and do copy into, or you can do open row sets or similar kind of functions with other tooling pieces. But this is the first time you're going to start seeing a preview around the warehouse. So the warehouse is getting more capabilities, and I'm enjoying the warehouse. Tommy, just out of curiosity, when do you use the warehouse? Like, when are you observing or working on the warehouse, or when are you building them a lot? Are you using just what's going on with you?
Really, right now, my general flow is it's a Lakehouse for the SQL Analytics endpoint. And if I need to push that into a database, I'm using a SQL database in Fabric. I'm loving me some SQL database.
Interesting. I know you were kind of a big fan of SQL databases outside of Fabric, and you like those as well. And so why choose a SQL database over the SQL of the data warehouse? Is there a difference there that you are needing to see versus one over the other?
Well, we'll be talking about a little today, but in terms of for user data functions, you can actually write into a SQL database. It just allows a little more editing, modifications. You have your normal SQL queries. Honestly, the SQL warehouse and the One Lake, there's a lot of overlap, or I think that's the perception.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap between SQL and warehouses. I'm not exactly sure which one to choose now, but I do like the fact that both of them exist. I will say, from my experience, the things that I'm using Warehouse for the most are I've built a bunch of tables in the Lakehouse, and I quickly need to query them or filter some records down or see what's inside the tables. And so I'm too lazy to go build another whole item. I just go to the warehouse that exists on top of the automatically built SQL warehouse or SQL Analytics endpoint, which I think is SQL Warehouse. I'm not sure if it's 100% different, but I go there and I quickly query those Lakehouse tables so I can get some answers out, figure out what's going on in the data, and then just do a couple of quick queries, and then I'm off to the races. I'm usually somewhere else. That's how I kind of use it.
1,000%.
That's a great topic. Other news items, Tommy.
Oh, it's going to keep coming. So the next thing we have is there is a competition for notebooks in the Power BI blog, which simply allows you to, this competition that's going to start on August 4th. So just a few days yesterday, close on August 29th. And you can go to the notebooks gallery on the Power BI blog to see about using reusable, insightful, innovative notebooks and prizes and recognition at FabCon Vienna. Don't want to miss. All the contest details are coming soon. They didn't really add in like what the contest details are, yada, yada, yada. But it sounds like fun, especially to kind of show your skills.
Yeah, it's a good competition to have. There's a lot of going to be, I think, like little tiny simple tools that kind of pop out of this, right? If I'm looking at different things here, but Tommy, most of the notebooks that exist inside the notebook gallery are all from Michael Kowalski, which one, I love his tool. Like, great. I'm very happy that it's there. But that's really the only tool that's out there really is Michael Kowalski's tool with Semantic Link Labs and a lot of examples there. They're starting to become some other tools. I see some report analysis, some SQL Server agent against Warehouse or Lakehouse. I'm starting to see some other notebooks appear here. This could be a mixed bag, in my opinion, right? There could be a lot of things going on in these notebooks. And the downside of this is, in order to get these notebooks on the gallery, I put them on GitHub. Like, they're not on the gallery itself. So it's kind of like, man, it's good, but it's like half-hearted effort, in my opinion, right? It's kind of like we get kind of the way there. We don't have the full, like, it should be like easier to get it into my Fabric. So I got to go download it, find it on GitHub. Anyways, it just is a little bit extra friction filled, but I'll be interested to see what the community is coming up with. There's probably going to be a lot of really interesting ideas. This is kind of what we need a bit more of, like open source community gallery, something that's a little bit more like,
it's hard,
developer centric. Yeah. Well, look at other tools, Tommy. Like, when you look at other tools that have notebooks attached to them, you can run the notebook or do the notebook in whatever tool you're looking at. I don't remember what program it was. Something was trying a notebook, and it just ran me into a notebook for free. Give me a notebook, let me run it up, spin it up. I could just start running the notebook immediately. I think we need some little level of that as well in this arena as well, so we could not only see these code pieces, but actually look at them and run them in real time, and then actually go and download them to my own tenant. But anyways,
the Jupyter company has a feature like that where you can run it. Google Colab is another thing that you can run.
Yes, that's what I've seen it in.
Yeah,
Google Colab was one I saw. It's basically like hey, here's a notebook. You can just go to the notebook and just run it there and see exactly how it runs. So Google Colab is actually a really interesting experience around the notebooks. I feel like we're missing that in Fabric. I feel like that's something we don't technically have.
Yeah, I mean, there is Python notebook, so it wouldn't be PySpark, because I don't know. You can install Spark on the Collab. You can pretty much do anything. But I'm thinking, Mike, it would be great with any Fabric example notebook where if you spun it up, it would always use an example database, though we're globally available for every tenant. So that way you don't have to configure anything. Just kind of say, okay, what does this do?
I mean, Microsoft already gives away some lake houses that already have like standard data already built into them. So maybe start there. Maybe start with some example sample data that's you could already get and download in your existing lakehouse. That way, if you did want to use a notebook or pull it into your environment, you could easily do it. So, like the competition, happy to see what's going on here. I'm a little skeptical on how much traction it's going to get. We'll see what happens. I'm kind of interested to see where this will go. So, good idea. Let's watch the execution, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, Tommy, what's next?
The next thing we have is autoscale billing for Spark in Microsoft Fabric is generally available. So, finally, right? A
Finally.
serverless billing model designed for flexibility and cost efficiency. So, what this means is simply that Spark jobs can run independently of your Fabric capacity
Yep.
and are based on a pay as you go, very similar how it works in Azure Synapse. So really any computes that you want to do, if you want to have a large job you want to do in just Spark, you don't want that to interfere with your normal Fabric capacity, you're good.
Boom. This is one of the features here. I like this feature a lot. This is awesome. I don't use enough Spark in my demo environments to really turn this on, but I have customers who do need this and want to turn this on, so they don't kill their capacity just because they're running a notebook. This makes a lot of sense. It pulls the billing out of Microsoft Fabric. It puts it into another location. If you have high spikes, high demands, it's all separate now. This makes sense. The feature is named totally wrong, Tommy. It's called autoscale billing for Spark. It's totally wrong. It should just be pay as you go Spark. That's what it is. So I'm going to rename the feature for you. So pay as you go Spark is now generally available. Tommy, I would also echo here too. So Spark, this makes sense because we have all the billing mechanisms for Azure. It's already there. It's the same. It's basically the same price if you ran Spark inside Synapse or Fabric. It's the same, dollars per compute units or whatever they're billing you for. This is something I feel like needs to exist for other operational data sets. Like when I'm talking about like Cosmos DB that's coming out of Fabric, talking about SQL databases coming to Fabric. These are two things that I'm like, I really like this ability to I can still pay for Fabric and get Fabric usage, but the consumption of that particular machine or units, right? That gets billed back towards Azure. Because in some regards, if I have a SQL transactional system inside Fabric, like the database that I need is actually in Fabric, I don't really want that to ever time out or have a threshold or have or ramp out of CU usage. I just want it to be working all the time. And so I may have a period of time that has high demand that I don't want to consume all my CUs for. I want to just have that be like an auto billing or pay as you go for other resources as well. What are your thoughts on this, Tommy? Does this make sense to you?
It's interesting because the SQL database is going to be having a billing for storage, not for computation, I believe, but that's not out yet.
To a point, though, right? I mean, they're going to bill you for the SQL database.
Yeah, they're going to bill you for the SQL database for you storing the data, but not for necessarily you moving things back and forth. So that's going to be separate billing.
I don't understand.
So
it's consumption-based billing.
Consumption-based billing, and that's just for storage, right? Not just for
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to. Microsoft has never given any compute away for free. That's the most expensive thing that they have on their books. It may be free for now for a trial, but I don't think they're giving away free compute for SQL servers.
No, they're not giving away for free, but there's two separate billings. There's any things like CUs, anything you're actually doing on the capacity, which is actually moving data in, moving data out.
Yeah,
there's a separate billing for storage.
Well, that's how it works for right now for lakehouses too. I mean, lakehouses is charged by the gig right now currently. So I don't see why that's any different.
Okay. Honestly, I really think a lot of organizations are going to be frustrated if every service has the separate billing or autoscale billing. The goal, like the idea with the Fabric capacity, right? If I'm already paying for the capacity, why would I then want like the autoscale? Sure, makes sense. But if you have all these separate billings plans that are in Azure that are not visible in Fabric, I think it's a little convoluted on what you're actually paying for the capacity, how many things you actually need for in Azure or in other billing plans, right?
Well, I'd be actually curious what the chat thinks about this. So chat, if you are interested in these features, let us know in the chat right now what you think about these features. Would you want autoscale billing or pay-as-you-go billing for like other services other than just Spark, or just is Spark okay? I would maybe tend to agree with you, Tommy. Like you can, it's on a per workspace level, right? So you don't have to have it not separate billing for Spark. You can do it, I think, on a workspace by workspace level for the Spark auto billing. So in a workspace that has a high load for Spark, you can turn that workspace on for pay-as-you-go billing. I'm thinking the same thing, right? If it's a workspace by workspace demand, right? I may have a SQL database that's just a warehouse, and that's fine. I'll keep that one inside Fabric, no problem. I can let that one sit there because I don't really need to go pay more money for something separate. But in the situations where I'm building like an operational database, or I'm building an operational database that I'm going to be doing dev, test, prod environments of, dev and test might be fine. They'll sit inside their Fabric SKU, no problem, not an issue. But when I get to production and I have this transactional database there, that's the one that I'm like, maybe we need to think about healing out that auto billing and have that being pay as you go in certain workspaces for certain use cases. And I think this is I'm probably speaking about the edge cases here, but I would be remiss if I didn't say I don't want my SQL server to start throttling queries because someone did something silly with an export of a data somewhere. And now the SQL server is saying, I'm going to reject all transactional information like that. You can't have that. So to me, there's like certain priorities of things. And like, I see there are certain workloads that are higher priorities than others. And that's what I'm trying to kind of accomplish with this auto scale billing, just prioritizing some of those workloads above others.
So
does that make sense?
Could we get auto scale on data flows Gen 2 then?
Why would you want to waste the money on doing that?
Don't eat up my capacity.
No, I do not want that.
Make sure you have a
don't do that.
Goodness me.
Do not want that.
Well, I am happy to see that that's there. I know it's more niche, but I know for a lot of people coming into Fabric, that's going to be really important.
I would agree, Tommy. Our last kind of comment here, or last kind of news article here, just came out recently. It was kind of interesting. Expanded data agent support for large data sources. So we had kind of challenges like when the data agents came out, if there was a large data set attached to it or had lots of tables in it, you were kind of limited in what you could do on data agents. It sounds like right now they have lifted some of these requirements. You can now have much larger data sets, and also point at Custo, semantic models, lakehouses, and warehouse data sets with over 1,000 tables and more than 100 columns and measures inside the agent. That's crazy. But let's think about it, Tommy. Where do you want agents to be living? You want them to live in a place that has lots of things, right? It's overwhelming for a user to go through and dig through all the information to find what you're looking for, or do some analysis, or put some stuff together. This is great. I think this is a really good move here. I think it makes sense to open these limits up a bit more and give more context to what is happening under the hood here. So what are your thoughts on this one, Tommy?
The 1,000 tables, that seems like a bit excessive, but the 100 columns, believe it or not, especially when you're dealing with, if you want to connect it to your dynamics, you want to connect it to your Dataverse or any a lot of raw data, the 100 columns is a limitation a lot of people probably got frustrated with. Now, that being said, I would argue, regardless of now that there's the larger data support or the larger schema sizes, they did say in the blog, we want to be transparent about performance. The reliability of results may vary. Also, this goes back to
with bigger schemas comes slower results.
Yeah. And this goes back to where we're trying to get a hold on data agents doing exactly what we want on a few tables. So I think this still remains to be seen on a single data agent and how wide or breadth the data sources that it should have, right? Because I think 1,000 data sources and all I have is a prompt to control it. And I've given it, that's going to make it a little tough, I think, for it to get exactly what I want. But I guess this has been a request from others, but honestly, my push and my recommendation is keep your data agents simple, straightforward with your data sources. Don't worry about trying to add 1,000 sources or 100 tables. And then if you need to expand from there. Make sure it can do the little things and then grow it from there.
I have one slight, so if we're done with the news, Tommy, I have one kind of like maybe beat from the street here a little bit that I can talk about here recently.
Oh,
yeah. So Okay, so one slight beat to the street, and this is kind of came up in the last day or two when I was working on some notebooks. So, Tommy, have you been working in notebooks and using Data Wrangler? I'm just start there.
Yes.
Okay. When you build a notebook, and you may be aware of the feature, I'm just going to kind of confirm with you. When you're working in the notebook, there is in the Data Wrangler, so you make a Spark data frame. You can see those data frames in Data Wrangler, and then you click a button that says, okay, I'm going to open this data frame. It could be DF, it could be named, initial load, like whatever the data frame you make in the notebook is. If you're in the Spark data frame area and you go to Data Wrangler seems to like pandas for whatever reason.
It does.
It favors pandas. Okay. When I do that, it makes a simple pandas data frame for me during the time while I'm working in Data Wrangler. And then you can build your transformations, you can make some edits. And then what you can do is you can then push the code from Data Wrangler back into your notebook.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed any issues getting the code from Data Wrangler back into notebooks? Have you had any issues there recently?
Honestly, my kind of workflow has been just copy and paste the code rather than doing the push, because it does seem to be a little buggy. But I always take whatever the code is generating. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to add that to my own cell. Thank you. Just like I like manual relations. Yeah.
So you don't like the fact that it's doing like define a function and then run the code and then a return statement at the end of it, correct?
Cell, I don't know where the cell's going. Yeah. But I do know what you're talking about. Data Wrangler does like pandas a little better.
It does. So one thing, two observations that I have found, just kind of want to make people aware of things. I have found a timestamp cast error. So, for example, I'm in pandas. I had a timestamp that was unknown to the power semantic model. So what I needed to do is I need to go in and change the data type of the column. So I found an edge case where the date format that I had in pandas, right? I was able to right click on the column, say change data type from a string into a date time. And when I did it in pandas, the rendering window, which is great, I do love this. As you make changes, it gives you like a green column or a red column. When you use Data Wrangler, it's either row by row or it does a column. So what I was doing, I was changing the column. So it deleted the old column, made a new column that was green again, same name, just was green and showed me the dates. I was like, wonderful, this solved my problem. I click add code to notebook, it goes back to the notebook. I run my cell, nothing but nulls. So there's a bug in how the code is interpreting the pandas transformation of timestamp into the Spark version of timestamps, because it's basically similar functions, but they don't do exactly the same thing. So for whatever reason, the date timestamp that I was using, it was something like the day of the week, the number of the day, the month in like 3 letters, and then the year. And then it had some timestamp stuff at the end of it. So it was just what I've seen, right? It just didn't return results. And so there was a bit of a bug between the translation between the pandas way of doing it and the Spark way of doing it. Okay, so it sounds like Michael Fortman is also in the chat, is having similar challenges as well. So I just wanted to point this out. It sounds like Microsoft has recognized this as a bug, or I'm filing bugs around this one. So hopefully it becomes resolved. So that's number one, was this kind of translation. You're going to see a little bit of interesting difference between Data Wrangler, and it's still fixing some issues. The other thing I found was if you use columns with special characters, pandas seems to be able to handle that correctly. The Spark data frames do not. So for example, I was loading data in using, I was using an API. So I was using an API in a pipeline. I was copying data in, and this is something to note, right? In a pipeline, when you copy things in an API, sometimes the API returns JSON or XMLA or other things. If you write that data down to a table, the names of the table columns will have dots in them. It'll be like, the nested data structure of XML, every time you go into a nested section, it'll give you like a dot. So it would be like table dot column dot subsection dot subsection dot subsection, whatever the thing is. it was nice that it did it for me on the front end in the pipeline side. But when I got to the data tables, when I was trying to do transformations in a notebook, all the dots in the name of columns were not being handled correctly. And so instead of, when it came out of Data Wrangler back into my notebook, I tried to run the code. It just failed immediately. I was like, what's going on? And it's saying it can't find the column. I'm like, no, the column's there. What's going on? And so there's a syntax issue where it comes out of pandas back into the notebook. If there are special characters, you need to use like these backticks in order to get it to properly grab the title of things. So just FYI, these are two kind of buggy things that I found in notebooks, in working with Data Wrangler and getting from Data Wrangler back to notebooks. So the first one really was this timestamp conversion data type issue. So sometimes you'll convert things and it won't come in correctly. And the second thing is you need to be very mindful of what your columns are named. I'm more and more using all lowercase column names with any spaces being represented as an underscore. That's kind of more of what I'm going to. I'm getting to a point where I'm finding so many little edge cases around little things about different Python functions. Some are case sensitive, some are not. I just don't do anymore. Everything is all lowercase with underscores in the middle. It seems to be safer, and I'm getting better results using notebooks. I'll just pause right there, Tommy.
Dude.
Any comments from
you?
You
Oh my gosh. And the date time, not only you're lucky you at least saw the nulls, so you need to stop what you're doing there. I had the worst issue with the pandas date time, needed to convert it to date. Well, pandas made it a date time Z or whatever, a different data type, which was not did not work with Spark when you wanted to write back to the table. So all these areas, like what the heck? What? I use Data Wrangler, man. I changed it to date type. Why isn't it working? So honestly, man, I have a Fabric, or I have a project in ChatGPT for called the Fabric Guru that helps me. It's basically, its focus is the conversion between Spark and Pandas and Notebook and Fabric and the gotchas, because the date type or the data type conversions are hard or rough, especially if you want to go back to Spark. They may not work, or they may not write to Spark. Honestly, with the Data Wrangler, I've been just really using more ChatGPT on what I want to do. And I'll give it the code from Data Wrangler, but I say, make sure this works with Spark, and I won't insert that into my notebook just because too many issues, man. So completely, that is a big gotcha. If you're doing things in pandas and you're going to need to bring that to Spark, oof, I feel sorry for you. I mean, it's
not bad. I mean, it's just a little bit, just be aware of it. Like, it's not like it's not the world's ending. A lot of it does work. So I just found two small edge cases that I think don't work. So I'm just going to point it out. I don't think, I wouldn't go like, ooh, your world's going to end. I wouldn't worry about it. Like, this is not something like you need to freak out about, but I would say it would be worthwhile for you to spend some time and note that if it doesn't work correctly, it's likely a translation between pandas and going back to your Spark notebook. Another way you could resolve this too is to not use Spark data frames, and instead just use Pandas data frames initially. So in your notebook, before you get the Data Wrangler, you could just convert your data frames right to Pandas initially, go into doing Data Wrangler, come out, use Pandas. But as I have learned as well, when you get doing really big data or you start doing large things, Pandas isn't the most performant thing either. If you do you listen to Mim at all, Tommy, on the social media platforms?
Yes. He has maybe the greatest GitHub following or repository. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Mim on the social media platforms, I think he's on LinkedIn and X right now, but Mim will greatly talk about the powers of DuckDB and how DuckDB is like this amazing, super fast, highly performant at large scale data stuff. So while I do like Pandas, it sounds like Pandas is kind of like the slowest of the bunch, right? It's the most widely used, but it's the slowest of the bunch. If you really want to do things, you're using DuckDB and other things as well. Anyways, 1,000%. Just wanted to throw that out there as well.
All right,
Anyways, I don't have any other items, Tommy. That's about it for our announcements. We've been doing a lot of
I think
intro stuff.
dude. I think we need. It's time for Translitical.
Let's do it. All right, let's jump into translitical topics. And Tommy, give us an overview here. What is translitical? Why do we want to talk about this? And like, what's going on here? So I'll let you kick it off here, Tommy.
Oh my gosh, where to begin? Translitical task flows is a new concept. It's a new word Microsoft came up with, I believe, last year at Ignite, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it combines two things: transactional and analytical. And really, the gist of it is really the ability to enable users to automate actions directly in the report. We've talked about write back.
Yep.
It's so much more than that, but it simply allows us custom to be able to do actions on data in a Power BI report. Obviously, this works with Fabric, and this all goes through a nice user data functions. But simply put, analytical task flows allow us to add data, delete data, call an external API, all within a Power BI report. And the actions are all customized by the report author.
So I want to just kind of deep dive on this a little bit, and I'll put the article here in the chat window as well, just for those who want to kind of follow along, is understanding what a translitical task flow is and how you can kind of learn more about them. I've been doing a little bit of playing around with these things, and whenever I talk to people about translitical, people immediately think, "Oh, it's write back," and this is, I think, maybe a little bit of a misconception. That's one of maybe like 3 or 4 or 5 other use cases around what you can do with it. And I think this is maybe this is, and again, Tommy, I'd be curious your thought here as well. It feels like this translitical thing is stepping on the toes of Power Apps slightly, or Power Automate as well.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's definitely the advanced version. So for those who are unaware, in Power BI, there are 2 visuals: the Power Apps and Power Automate visual, which allows you to connect to your app or to your to one of your flows and simply kick off or do something within that. It's fine, but it's very it's not flexible in terms of it's that app or that flow. But this is really so much more, Mike.
Yes, and I think this is the idea here is when we talk about reports. I mean, this has been asked for like what, Tommy, since day one. Initially, when as soon as there was data in Power BI and we could interact with it, people wanted to update records and from that, I mean, even in the early days, Tommy, there was like a whole bunch of companies trying to build custom visuals that would do exactly this.
Oh, the amount of custom visuals is insane.
So I feel like to some degree, this move by Microsoft on Translytical really has cut at the knees a lot of these other companies that are doing interactive report data changes kind of thing. There's definitely some nuance to this. Like it's not like I have a table matrix where I can go in and edit a single cell in the table and then the table automatically updates itself. So it's not something like that at this point. But we can do a lot of interesting things with write back there as well. I'm also thinking here too, Tommy, like let's talk about the architecture of this, right?
Yeah,
this is a button that's inside a report that is able to put context. Like when I press go on this button or this text box, it will read information in and it's passing text or whatever's in the slicer, where this is like a text slicer. So the text slicer is part of this solution as well. You can pick up information inside that text slicer, and as long as there's data on the page, you can pass all the information into the button press. And so when you do, this is where I think the hooks of this really make sense to me. The components of this solution are the report, some form of a button, and then an Fabric data function, a UDF. Those are the main components of this. And then what you do after the user data function is kind of like whatever you want. Like you want to send a team. Like the examples are send a Teams message, call an API, write data down to a lakehouse, or put it in a warehouse, or stick it in. It's like the possibilities are endless because the user data function, while it isn't a Power App, it does let you write Python, and you can do anything you want there.
And that's the big difference here, because I think everyone's just thinking, oh, translitical task flows is just right back on the data in that source. Not at all. Since it is a user data function in Python, you're kind of free towards any Python package, or really any Python function you want to create. And to your example, right? The example of there's a button and there's a text slicer. Well, depending how you create that function, it may be a text slicer that you type in text for a description. It may come from a table of selected record, but it can be multiple objects on the Power BI report that's going to send that data or that information to that translytical task flow, that user data function.
Yes.
It doesn't have to necessarily be data in that report, which is a very important aspect here.
Mm.
You may
Yeah,
have a Power
give me a
BI,
use case here. Yeah, build
yeah.
me out one here. What are you thinking?
So you may have a Power BI report that's looking at all the customer sales orders, and
Mhm.
you want to add a description on the customer information, but the report doesn't have anything about customer tables or customer descriptions. Well, the data, your translitical action button, however we want to put it, may have that text slice say, add a description for the selected company. Your function's going to get the whatever that customer ID is for that order, and can
Mhm.
send an annotation to a customer table in your Fabric SQL database.
Yep.
It can be completely outside of whatever data is in that Power BI report. But again, it's more than just write back too. You can modify the records, you can add annotations, you can even get data, like get contact info from a CRM or whatever data source based on the button send, or even do AI suggestions or a kickoff and approval. So
Yeah.
all these things are available because of the user data functions that you've written. So it's really important to note that whatever you selected in your report or in that visual is not what's going to be written back. Write back is probably a little misleading almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's again. I feel like the write back is just a small portion of what you can do. Like that's my point here. It's like it's just there's so much more to do just beyond that. I just recently did a workshop around setting this up. Have you set up one yet, Tommy, from scratch?
Yes. So I
Level.
try to
Okay.
take the example from the GIST
Okay.
page, all the examples, and it was like, okay, I would love to see a visual here.
So level of difficulty. Like so, if again, I'm also thinking about where do we put this?
Yeah.
Again, there's so much more potential here. We can open up people's mind around. There's a lot more to go on with Translytical. And so a couple things. First thing I was thinking was, man, this is pretty neat. If you're ever doing like a workshop or something like when you're doing like a full pre-con day or something like that, you could totally make a Translytical app that would be like your help support desk. You could literally have, hey, I'm going to build this report.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have a chat message thing. I mean, you could build like a chat messenger in this side of this thing. So I'm trying to on the side trying to build like a little simple chatty system here where you can go into a report page and have a bunch of people submitting comments or things, and it all gets sent into a central database, which then now becomes like an interactive chat experience around different people and how they can interact with these chat things. So that's kind of interesting. And it can be a real time thing. It'll happen as soon as people submit messages, which would be kind of fun watching the system actually update and do those things in real time.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's not terribly complex in terms of writing the function. However, I think the only confusing or kind of difficult barrier is all the examples that they have.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see what that actually correlates to or the visual, because there's some syntax that you need to be aware of in
What do you
terms of
mean?
like the
Explain it.
UDF function. So if you actually want to add a variable for something you're plugging in from the Power BI report, use this question mark,
Yeah.
and then you feed that in later. It's a bit new. They don't really explain that in the documentation. They just kind of show it.
Which side are you talking about? You're talking on the Power BI
The
side or you're talking on
the
the
user
function
data
side?
function. Yeah, because you cannot. So, and this is an important note too. You want to get started with Translitical task flows, you have to have a user data function, which means you have to have
Yes.
Python code that you are writing or have written. And
Yes.
so that Python code is going to tell you the input. You can do some calculation, and then it's going to do eventually whatever that output or action is. But based on the documentation for the annotations, it's like, okay, it looks pretty simple because you can, get a JSON response. You can do a SQL read command, but there's some weird syntaxes that if you didn't not know how it correlates to Power BI. For example, there's a select from company status where company equals question mark. And then you're like, okay, how do I get that variable in there? That's a Python function. There's also this new actions called cursor execute. So basically when you actually click on the button.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of people, it's like, can I see more visuals of the Power BI report correlated to that function? Just so if I want to add a text slicer and a table, I think that makes it a little confusing. Just taking the example code, you can see in Power BI, you add a button and you have to have new update. And even if you just take some of the example code that Microsoft has, one of them has for a text slicer and like a conditional formatted or like deselected value. Okay, well, I add the button, I say data action, choose a workspace, choose the UDF, and it's like, oh, I can choose this text slicer. Cool, a nice drop down. It basically gives you all the parameters of what that UDF needs. So it's pretty easy to get that samples getting started, but I think for the realm of what's possible, actually, let me ask you. So your workshop that you did with this, what did you show? Did you use the Microsoft samples, or do you like?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah. So let me get you like, where do I think the hard part of this solution is, right? So I don't think the hard part is setting up the Power BI report. The Power BI report is pretty straightforward. That doesn't seem to be the issue for me. The issue is even the UI. That makes sense. Like it kind of makes sense what's coming out of the report. How do you bind different data from the report into what's going into the function? There's a little bit of wonkiness around like how do you select certain items, right? If something is selected, how do you get the data out of the report? So you have to be a little bit careful there, like what you're selecting and how do you wire up the function. I surely think the most difficult part of this is writing the function, right? So it's writing the function that is the most difficult part of this, because you have to understand the connection between what is coming out of the report data wise and what is coming into the function. And so in the examples that are given, I actually put another link here, different examples of translytical task flows. The one that I am looking at here is the add data annotation. So adding an annotation, add an annotation. And so in this example, there's a couple of things the function does that I think is easy, right? It says, hey, look, I'm going to make a connection. The connection will be SQL database, the type of it. And then it will be, what is the alias or the database you're going to be talking to? So there is the @ symbol, and you're defining, I'm going to make a connection. The nice part of this function is it just knows what you're trying to connect to. As long as you call off the right SQL database and it's in the right location with proper permissions for the user creating it, great, it just works. And so that's a lot of connection string things we don't have to save in our code. It just kind of works. And that's really nice. Right. So from that perspective, that part of the function, I think, seems to be very easy. But to your point, Tommy, I really had to read very slowly because I was not very familiar with this SQLDB connect, SQLDB connection.cursor. What is it doing? It's inserting queries into something, and then it's executing the query. So it's writing the statement in one line, and then it's injecting the SQL in it using a data function. So it was kind of a little bit hard to digest for me. Okay, I'm going to be entering this data in here. How does the data object in these functions match what's being built when you insert data using the insert query function as well? So there's this cursor.execute function where you're using the insert into item. And so it just was a little bit like, I was confused. I didn't quite understand it. To your point, Tommy, there was 4 question marks that were inputting the data. And there is again, with Python, there's an order to things, right? If you have an object with 3 different variables in it, a list, basically, every single question mark becomes an item in that list. It just was a little bit, again, not familiar. If you're not familiar with Python, it'll feel a bit strange and awkward. So from that perspective, that was interesting there. I would definitely say the most challenging part is getting comfortable with what the Python function is doing. Now, I also argue this. I do have Edge, and Edge does have a little Copilot, or I have Grok, or I have whatever other AI thing. Python's a very well-known language, so I can go ask some help. I don't need to know all the syntax of the Python. I can actually borrow from Microsoft or these agents to have them help me build that out a little bit. So in that regard, I think it's a little bit
Which
nice.
is nice. Yeah. So, and Mike, it's pretty powerful. How many people did you have in the class? And I really want to know, what was their reaction to Transolitical task flows?
I think the reaction, which is pretty, I mean, they liked it. I think it, but again, I think a lot of the questions came back was, well, how is this different than Power Automate? Why would I use this versus the other solution? Like, well, this only uses fabric elements. You get a bit more control, I think, about what happens in the Python, but it's definitely not Power Automate. It doesn't have the graphical interface of doing this, deciding that. I mean, you could do the same. It's the same logic could be built into Python, not a problem. You're just writing code versus having a graphical interface. So to that point, Tommy, we've talked a lot about where does Microsoft make things easy? Well, a lot of what they've built in the Power Platform as well has built these graphical interfaces that you use block diagrams to generate code that you can then use. The hesitation here was, well, why don't I just use that? And my main argument was, well, it's a license you don't have to pay for, right? You have to go get Power Automate. It's not really integrated deeply into the product. It doesn't quite do everything that you want. It felt like there was a bit more flexibility in like what information you could send into the function, and the function could handle like multiple variables getting sent in at the same time. Whereas Power Automate doesn't seem to be as flexible about getting the data in. And my experience, anytime I put Power Automate in a report, it was just really clunky. It just never seemed to wire up correctly, or it was just very hard to wire up correctly. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the toughest thing too is, again, this idea of write back or pushing data with both Power Apps and Power Automate. You kind of send it and hope that everything occurred. With Translytical task flows, you do get that feedback as well. Like one of the cool examples that they have here is the ability to actually do an AI suggestions for proposals.
That was interesting. Yes, that's a cool one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that it's so much, again, I think just saying right back here is just, it's not giving it its due. Mike, do you think the way they've set up Translytical task flows with the user data functions is almost like a canvas as too bare? So this is my one.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, keep going down this path. I like this.
My one concern, and at least with the documentation they have now and the examples, is you can do anything. Okay, well, where do I even start? I know the annotations, but it almost makes my mind, like, it almost makes me go into overdrive trying to think of the first example I want to do or the actions I want to do, because if I can do anything, well, there must be 100 different use cases for this, right? However, I think that it's very bare right now in terms of what's possible. So yeah, kind of, what do you think about how they've kind of set it up? And for those who are just like, I want to get started, I see the examples, but there's got to be other things, right?
Yeah, I would argue, Tommy, to your point here, this is not for the faint of heart, right? The Translitical is not going to be your beginner users. You're not going to give this to wide open to your organization. This is very purpose built, very specific interactions with reports and data systems or data things behind the scenes. So I really think you need a strong use case, because it takes a little bit of time to set it up. You're going to make an investment to do something like this, and there's a lot of little pieces to figure out here. So I would argue, to your point, Tommy, this is pro dev. Like, this is all pro dev in my mind. This is not a beginner user thing. I would encourage people to, if you're interested in Translitical, go to the GitHub from Microsoft here, and I put that in the link, the chat as well. So Sunjata has got this really great example user data functions markdown file. You can go grab all the custom code that comes directly from there. Go there first. Go through the Microsoft tutorials around Translitical, because that's really good starting points of what's going on. And I think that's a great understanding of what is capable. And I think you can get really creative with it. Now, the downside of this is I'm not really sure. Again, this has been out for a couple of months now. I'm not seeing a lot of people building other example notebooks around Translytical things. So again, going back to like the notebook experience, like there's a notebook competition. I think there's competitions exist for people to build stuff or create things on their own time and then leverage it for the community. It's the encouragement of the community to kind of do these bigger things. And I'd like to see more creativity. I'd like to see more creativity around what Transolitical task flows are doing. My only other rub on this one is in the AI suggestion example, when it talks about using a different AI model, wonderful. In the middle of the AI example, it talks about making your own prompt, write whatever you want. Right. And then it says deployment using GPT-4o. So you can pick your model, which is nice. That's something you can't do typically with Copilot. But the downside of this is, and again, this is for example purposes only, inside the code, they threw down the API key directly in the code inside the function, the user data function. So I don't really love that. But other than that, you could use an OpenAI client to go get a real model and write your own custom prompt on things. So there's some really interesting things you could do there.
Man, that like the AI suggestions one too is, where does someone get started then? Because if I can write back, if I can get in return back AI suggestions, if I can add annotations, if I can return data from another database, where would you recommend someone starting? Because for me, rather than again trying to do all the examples like, hey, you can actually do a dynamic marketing email or get contact info, I would start. I think the example that you did in your workshop is a SQL table with annotations is a great place to start. Just to add a description or add a comment to a record in a table. But I would say, honestly, just if you really want to see the power of the Transolitical task flows, is going to be that get the contact info and the AI suggestions are pretty neat, because that allows you to say, okay, I'm looking at an order. Oh, well, what else has this person done this contact? Well, I can just click on that button and I can get all that contact info from a Fabric SQL database or from really any particular source, and see basically what their status is, see different information that's going to get returned in the report. Yeah. Again, that's data that exists outside. Where would you recommend someone just getting started?
For what? I think I just read that recommendation.
With if you were to say, I want to create my first task flow, I want to create my first Transolitical data action button.
Were you listening? Because I just said go to Sunjata's GitHub.
Is there any other ones that you have? Yeah,
nope.
yeah.
So, okay, that's your question.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I have not found.
Yes, I'm looking at the GIST. Yeah.
The only one that I have found is the one from Microsoft that has like the 5 or 6 examples. I have not found any additional ones above this, and so that's where it's going to be. Here's a starting point. Figure out what you want to do from there. After outside of this, then I don't know. I haven't seen any other GISTs or any other community-based projects around Translitical task flows yet.
So let's assume that they're going to add the documentation. It's going to be feature-rich in terms of the samples. As we look forward to what this will mean, yes, we know it's not for the faint of heart. We know this is someone who needs to have, that Python experience and call more or less a developer. If this is what we think it is this something that you see as being considered whether or not a game changer or something to consider for your every report that you do, whether or not you actually add it?
No, okay. It's for every report. Yes, this is a very, very specific use case. Translitical task flows is a very specific use case. Again, I kind of would echo on if one of your use cases doesn't fit one of the examples that Microsoft gives, there could be other things here like call a random API, send data to the cloud, make a request to get data from an API. Those would be things that would be good opportunities to do this stuff. So I do think that's important. Okay, I'm going to give you one that's near and dear to my heart right now, which is there's a lot of websites that supply data to you, like Twitter or X or podcasters, what we do for Spotify, but those APIs are hidden. They're behind a paywall, and you need to like hack the APIs to get your data out of it. How nice would it be to make a report where you could submit your own little like, cookie into it and have here's the cookie, Mr. Function in the user data function. Go hit this API call and get the data out that I need and save it to this table. Like you could do things like that. You could actually do a bit more complicated things to help yourself to go get the data on demand. You could go require the information when you need it. That seems like a good use case for these situations, right? When it's very specific, I'm in the report. I don't want to leave the context of the report. I need to do something else and either return or modify or manipulate some data or APIs outside of my report. I can get data back. And the other thing I think is also neat here too is the user data functions supply data back to your report. So, for example, I don't know Power Automate does a good job of like responding back to you when you completed a call.
It does not. It does not.
Okay. So if you, in a Power Automate example, you would say submit data or send this data here, whatever you want to do. It just kind of works and says success and is done. In the user data functions, you could say, in this example here for the AI suggestions, you can submit something. And then it can actually respond back in a little message box in the upper right-hand corner. Your function is being run. Here's the answer. Here's some response. There's other feedback that comes back from the function. So the function actually has a response mechanism that you can give back to the reporting thing as well. So I think that's, again, it's much more refined of an experience than it would be just a Power Automate inside things.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm thinking about this more and more, and I think with the really allowing the custom functions, I think about all the times people want to comment on the report, right? Or there's a record, there's a right, all those different things, and the comments are available, but usually it's like, hey, that's not the sales manager, or I cannot. The amount of scenarios where this little button that could easily send an approval or an email over without having a whole Power Automate would be huge. And also people can add their descriptions. So this does, to me, at least not necessarily the full shebang of the write back, but just adding those actions that can go to Teams or send notifications for data that people are unsure of. Man, this almost feels like it's building a Power BI to be that app rather than it's that report.
Well, it's already been a data app all along. It's just this, to me, solidifies more of that, right? I think just my hesitation here is make sure you apply it where it makes the most sense. Don't just throw, like with every new feature that comes out from Power BI, Dami, this feels like the early days, right? Anytime something, oh, look, there's a new setting on a bar chart. There's a new setting on the table or a matrix or whatever. I'm like, quick, let's build a report that uses this new feature. Yes. We need to add it immediately. Look, bookmarks are here. Let's make a bunch of bookmarks. And so, I think about now more strategically, like, is this going to be hard to maintain? Is the lemon worth the squeeze? Do we really want to spend, a half a day working on building this thing out, this feature out, and then not using it? Like, if I only want to build things that are going to be heavily used, right? I don't want to just build stuff just because it looks cool or it's a new feature. So I'm trying to be a bit more strategic around when we apply these things. And this feels to me as one of these ones to be more strategic around when to apply Translytical task flows. Awesome. With that, about it. I think we're about done. Let's do a quick wrap here. So thank you all for listening to Translitical Task Flows. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. Go check out the documentation from Microsoft. These are very powerful. They can really open you up into doing a lot of additional things here around reports and having interactions outside of the report. So really taking action on things after you have looked at the report and done some analysis. You can directly interact with other data pieces, which is a lot really fun. That being said, we do appreciate you listening. We know you can spend your time anywhere else. Please, if you like this conversation or felt this was good, give us a share or share it on social media. Let other people know that you like the podcast. With that being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. And share with a friend, since we do this for free. Do you have a question, idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Well, head over to powerbi.tips/podcast, leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.